Welcome to SCI Asia's podcast on environment and policy in Asia. In this podcast series, we invite experts to discuss the many critical and complex environmental challenges in Asia and how to find solutions through policy and partnerships.
Welcome everyone to SCI Asia's podcast series on optimizing urban food resilience. I am your host, Sofia Cavalleri, Research Associate at the Stockholm Environment Institute Asia Office. In today's episode, we will be talking about how to localize sustainable food systems as part of our initiative to make circular food systems more accessible to a wider audience. We are pleased today to have Nisa from Bakudapan here joining us in this podcast episode. Bakudapan is a research group based in Indonesia that works on promoting local foods. Hi Nisa, could you please share a little bit with our listeners about yourself, what Bakudapan is doing?
Yeah, hi Sophia. Thank you for having me. Hello everyone. My name is Nisa. I'm currently working as independent researcher and creative worker. Also, at the same time, I'm the co-founder of Bakudapan Food Study Group. So as mentioned by Sophia, Bakudapan is a collective of 8 members who are based in Jogja. So I'm one of the members. The other member, we have Elia, Gatari, Lista, Nevi, Monica, Shelvina, and Silva. All of us came from different backgrounds and interests, but we have the same interest on food. And mainly our work on research, we're doing research focusing on food, both as field in itself and as an entry point to explore broader socio-political issues in the world today. And we're working on research practices, but also experimenting with different methods on doing research. So that's Bakudapan.
So the theme for today for this series is food. So food is more than just a transaction. It carries deeper socio-economic, political, cultural meanings and historical implications, as you mentioned, Nisa. So when we talk about food access, we touch upon the concept of access to resources and also access to power. This is connected not only to food security, but also to food sovereignty. The global peasant movement La Via Campesina has defined food sovereignty as the rights of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and the right to define their own food and agriculture system. Nisa, you have done some very impressive work on local food systems with Bakudapan. What is your take when it comes to food sovereignty?
The question itself, it's become our current reflective topics in our group. So we realized that the term of food sovereignty itself has fairly been taken from the notion of the local knowledge. So as Bakudapan, we realized that the term sovereignty is not rooted from the community, how they live, how they work. Also, when we think about the access and the space for the community to define their own food and agricultural systems are not yet feasible in recent times. Within the context of the community that we encounter, the main challenge right now is the freedom to plan and to eat what they used to have. Before those, let's say in quotes, who have higher power, created certain rules on what the farmers should plant or should eat. For example, we believe each region has their own soil condition that makes specific crops become their staple food. For example, in Jogja, there's community in Gunung Kidul that consume cassava or yam, and in other parts of Indonesia, they consume sagu and many more. We understand it's their staple food, but then it's disturbed by the nation's agriculture regulation and policy. Let's say in this case, what we all know together is rice. They become dependent with rice before they already have their own staple food. And now they need to distinguish all their staple food and change it into rice field. And this is the fact that is currently happening in most indigenous communities in Indonesia.
Super interesting. So in the past 2-3 years, Bakudapan has been involved in some applied research on edible weeds in particular. One of your key questions as a study group has been, how is food sovereignty built by common people? So Nisa, have you discovered anything interesting with this research in particular?
Interesting that what I said earlier about food sovereignty is actually related to what I'm going to explain now, that the food sovereignty is built by the common people, and the answer is totally yes, as the government, we thought, that has failed them, and therefore they build their own system to sustain their life. It's the effort to preserve and archive their local knowledge, and it should be done by the community itself, and it has become their main drive to be persistent in their work to preserve and archive their own knowledge, because who else will do this? And in relation to preserving local knowledge, edible weeds become one of the examples on how mainstream knowledge has alienated the local knowledge on edible weeds, because edible weeds used to be a common knowledge that was frequently practiced and consumed by everyone. Nothing really special about it compared to now. They have new label as superfood or healthy food, but usually it used to be common plants or common crops that we found in our backyard or in the streets, in abandoned land, and many more. It's easy to find because they grew everywhere. But however, as massive development happens in the city area, the mainstream crops also started to plant it everywhere. And then the knowledge of edible weeds gradually disappear. We cannot really stop them because there's massive force from outside.
Yes, so it's connected to history, power, and you touched upon the point of common knowledge. I was also thinking about the concept of circular food systems. And what do you think local food knowledge, including the edible weeds that you just mentioned, how can they help us achieve circularity in food systems?
In terms of how to achieve circularity in food system for edible weeds, they can help this problem, but then with further notes that edible weeds, we cannot fully rely on it, because as we know, edible weeds cannot be commodified. We cannot really plant them. Edible weeds grew by themselves. They have their own rule. We cannot really modify them to grow in certain area as we try to plant them, and it's not success because they always grew outside their designated area. From that on, we realized they grew literally everywhere. So we really need to try to discuss it again about the local knowledge on how to use the edible weeds, because you can really find it everywhere. Even now, when you go out, you can see on the streets, there might be some plants that you can eat. So we need to start to discuss again about the knowledge itself.
Yes, absolutely. And by we mean common people as well. So we understood that it is very challenging to promote the preservation of local foods. And how can we people, especially younger generations maybe, preserve this local food knowledge?
It's really challenging to invite younger generations to preserve local food knowledge, but it's not possible. Based on Bakudapan's experience, we met different communities that really strive to invite younger generation to participate on preserving local food knowledge. For example, Sekolah Pagesangan, which located in Jogja, they live quite far from the city. So the main challenge for inviting younger generation is the temptation of working in the city area to find jobs, to leave their hometown, to leave their village to find better life. And Sekolah Pagesangan has been working diligently, and one of a great initiative that managed to start empowering younger generation to stay in their village, to work on their land, to preserve the knowledge on how produce and plan local plans, local food knowledge using different methods such as through education and continuously initiating activity that always includes them in the process.
This is a very, very inspiring bottom-up example. So moving on to some top-down kind of instruments, what kind of policy support instruments do you think is needed to effectively preserve local food knowledge?
In terms of policy, I might not be in the right position to suggest feasible policy to preserve local food knowledge. I believe that we need to come together from different individuals, communities, and stakeholders to preserve the local food knowledge. One option or one thing that we can do together, it's a policy that can help and protect the land of indigenous communities. Because at the moment, that's the real or the main challenge that affected by indigenous communities in recent times, whether in the city area or in the rural area. They face direct threats of getting evicted from their own land, where without land, they cannot live, they cannot preserve their knowledge or practice their knowledge. So we need to think that land is the most important thing when we talk about preserving local food knowledge, as land becomes the basic necessity of it.
Now we know more on the importance of promoting local foods to achieve food sovereignty and circular food systems. Thank you so much, Nisa, for your contribution to SCI Asia's podcast series on optimizing urban food resilience. Good luck with your exciting work with Bakudapan. For our listeners, please stay tuned, subscribe to SCI Asia's podcast channel, and follow Bakudapan.
Thank you for listening to SCI Asia's podcast on environment and policy in Asia. For more information on these topics, guests, and our work, please visit our website on www.sci.org.